Director Haynes, I want to turn to a concern I've raised with you and Director Byrne and others, and that's my worries about growing politicization and the analysis coming out of our intelligence agency. This is an annual threat assessment. There is an annual threat assessment, so let's look at it. On page 33, you write, transnational, racially or ethnically motivated violent extremists continue to pose the most lethal threat to U.S. persons and interests. Are you serious? You seriously think that racially and ethnically motivated violent extremists are the most lethal threat that Americans face?
So, yes, sir. In terms of the number of people killed or wounded as a consequence.
How many people were killed by racially and ethnically motivated violent extremists in the United States last year?
I don't have the exact number for you right here, but I will get it for you.
How many people were killed by fentanyl in the United States last year?
As you know, it's over 100,000 for fentanyl. But
so isn't that a more lethal threat?
Absolutely, but it's not being compared against fentanyl in that statement. It's in the context of terrorist threat.
Okay, so on page 38, you write about governance challenges in Europe. You talk about populist parties taking advantage of inflation and high energy prices. You worry that public discontent, potentially including increased mass protests, could undermine backing from mainstream European governments while increasing support for populist and extreme parties. You also say it could undermine the quality of democracy. Well, how is this foreign intelligence? And who are these populist parties in Europe that we're so concerned about?
So we can get you further information about this, but I'll just say as a general matter, Senator, we do cover different effects on democracy throughout the world, and that is something that is typically perceived as part of our remit.
Are the Brothers of Italy, the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's party, are they a populist or extreme party that are a threat to America's interests?
I don't know that, I wouldn't want to speak for the analysts as to whether or not they consider them a populist party. I suspect that they may, but I don't know that they would say that they're a threat to to the United States.
All right, just one final example of this. On page 18 about nuclear issues with Iran, you write that since the assassination in November 2020 of nuclear scientist Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, Iran has accelerated the expansion of its nuclear program. It's an unfortunate ending for Mohsen Fakhrizadeh in November of 2020. Did anything else happen in the world in November of 2020 that might have caused Iran to accelerate its nuclear program?
Senator, I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Pretty big event here in America. November 2020.
If you mean the election,
I do mean the election.
I don't believe that our analysts perceive that as being the key.
Really, because I've gone through the IAEA reports. Iran took almost a year after President Trump withdrew from the nuclear deal until the summer of 2019 to say it was going to incrementally begin to breach its limits. After we killed Qasem Soleimani in January 2020, they basically ceased all enrichment or other activity. And since November of 2020, they've reintroduced advanced centrifuges. They began enriching uranium past the critical 3.67% mark. They produce uranium metal. They've moved enrichment underground. They're now enriching to almost 90%. Undersecretary of Defense for Policy Colin Kahl said to the House recently that they're just 12 days away from a breakout, implying that all happened on the former administration's watch. This has all happened since November of 2020, Director Haynes. And your report says nothing about the Biden administration's policies. You really don't think the Ayatollahs had any change of views once it was clear Joe Biden was going to be president?
I think our analysts would look at leaving the JCPOA as one element that's relevant to the,
All right, so my time has expired. I'll say, Director Burns, we've talked about this in a classified setting before. I mean, your organization produces the vast majority of the analysis for the IC, and it's not just the conclusions, but also the priorities and the volume of focus on things like climate change or gay marriage bills in other countries, or some of these conclusions that just cause me great pause about the priorities and the resources we're applying to the critical threats this country face. We talk more about it in a classified setting.
Okay, thank you. Senator